Welcome to the Global Education Station Presents. I'm Annette Levesque, your host, education and technology strategist, and author of eLearning Gold, the ultimate guide for leaders. In each episode, we explore innovative ideas and best practices in education, connecting with directors, CEOs, authors, and thought leaders. Together, we'll share stories and insights to inspire and engage learners globally. Today, we are joined by a remarkable leader in education, Susie Lee Fernandes. With over 24 years in education, Susie's been a teacher, principal, superintendent, focusing on equity and leadership development. Currently, she's the Director of Professional Learning and Engagement at the Ontario Principals Council, where she creates engaging learning opportunities for school leaders. Susie holds a Doctor of Education degree in Human Rights and Equity, and she loves building strong relationships with community partners. Welcome, Susie.
Thanks, Annette. It's great to be here.
Maybe we can get started today by having you tell us a little bit about the Ontario Principals Council, what it is and what its role is in provincial education.
Okay. Well, the Ontario Principals Council is a not-for-profit organization representing approximately 5,400 principals and vice principals in the public sector across Ontario. And so our primary purpose is to obviously advocate for and support practicing principals and vice principals, but also it is about supporting, enhancing, and moving forward exemplary leadership practices. So we have sort of the work on the advocacy side as well as the proactive side of ongoing professional learning.
And what's your role in this, Susie? What is your primary role within the Ontario Principals Council?
Okay, so as the Director of Professional Learning and Engagement, I really exist in what I feel is probably the happiest, most positive space of engaging in learning. So really working with any principal, vice principal across the province who really wants to enhance their leadership capacity and build their practices and knowledge base. As you know, ongoing professional learning is a standard of our practice. So it really is kind of working in that space of positivity and getting better all the time.
That's fantastic. So if I were a principal and I wanted to enhance my skill sets, I'm feeling very overwhelmed in this day of AI right now, and I contact you, what would that funnel or journey look like?
Well, it's as overwhelming as it can be, and I certainly understand the current provincial landscape. The process is actually really quite simple. If you want to, you could check out our webpage, but if you reach out, someone, often it's myself, will get back to you with different options. And there's definitely a lot of options. So you could do anything from actually listening to one of our 15-minute podcasts to engaging in an additional qualification program, which is about 125 hours of instruction, and that's accredited through the Ontario College of Teachers. So there's a wide range because we know, people are at different places, they have different things going on in their lives, and so we really just want to do something to meet everybody's needs.
Perfect. And so are these sessions typically, are they live classes? Do they have live workshops? Or are they typically online?
It's a blend of both. I would say post-COVID, most of our learning is offered online because it does offer, in a lot of cases, greater access and the ability. It allows us to connect colleagues from across the province. And there is so much to learn from kind of moving outside your own district, your own school and the borders, and learning about what's happening across the province.
Okay. What do you think, or what are some of the primary challenges that you see principals facing today in this current, as we're heading into soon a new school year?
Well, there is no shortage of challenges, that's for sure. I think the role of the school leader has significantly changed. I would say that was true when I was a school principal. I would hear that from people who had been veterans and been in the role for 10 plus years would say, Susie, this role wasn't like this when I first started. And I think that statement is even truer now today, post-COVID, than it ever was. So I think along with, I think society as a whole, we're seeing a greater increase in mental health. And that's at all levels. So ultimately, that is going to be a huge challenge and something that we need to sort of navigate through and support. Staffing shortages are a huge issue that we're seeing across various sectors, but certainly in education. Workload challenges. We're seeing that, the provincial climate too around, I guess, providing education that meets everybody's needs. I think there's been a certain highlight and a focus on this, and that in itself brings along huge challenges. Even with curricular changes, we've got new curriculum coming out, demands of, I would say, things around the right to read, which has been really challenging for us in the education community, to really respond to that and respond to it well, given the resources that we have.
Can you tell me more about the challenges? I've heard about challenges that other outside of Ontario and even Canada are experiencing with the right to read, but can you tell me more about what you're seeing in Ontario with regards to that?
I think it's about any change in practice. We certainly know that changing practice in a really authentic, deep way is hard. It's hard work. So it's about I think, building the capacity of our educators and leaders to know what maybe is encompassed within the science of reading and how we engage and teach our youngest readers, to also those who are later on in their academic career who have not developed those foundational literacy skills, can be even more daunting and more challenging. So it really is about providing supports for capacity building, but then also supports to actually do this work in schools. I think what's happened too with mental health, the rise of anxiety, staffing shortages. It is about really kind of in the everyday operation of schools, what does that look like? And as much as sometimes, I think we all want to do this work, there's a lot of barriers that we are navigating through and constantly coming up and being sort of challenged with on a daily basis.
And
So
what
I
do
think
you think? Oh, sorry. Sorry, continue.
there's two parts to that.
Right. So you talk about the barriers, and I know there are a lot of, I'm hearing from principals as well, a lot of barriers to um, seeking resources and time and shortages. And what do you think are one of the greatest barriers to principals being able to obtain support when they're experiencing mental health issues?
Um, oh gosh, I mean, I think maybe one of the first ones that comes to mind, there's been a lot of work done around mental health, well-being, destigmatizing over the past decades, I would say. I don't know that
Right.
we're yet to where we need to be. And so I think that is, and different cultures also to respond and see mental health in different ways. So I think we're still not there. So that is sort of a challenge that's there from the beginning. Um, and then I
I
think
think
it's,
it's
oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think that you're absolutely right. The stigma, has remained the same, even though there are, and we don't know what the causal effects are. I mean, there are suppositions about what the causal effects are with all of the bells and whistles we're all responding to and the time and the workloads that we have. But, we still don't see when someone has to take time away because they're just worn out or they're tired or they're experiencing anxiety. It's still viewed very differently than if they broke their leg, if it was a physical ailment and they had to leave, which we wouldn't blink at. We'd say, go take the time, right? I think you're right. And especially when you're in a leadership role, that's extremely, I think, challenging.
Absolutely. So it is that whole idea of rethinking of what a leader is. And I think that's another shift that we're starting to make, and we're not quite there. In the past, we might have thought the leader is the expert, knows everything, has the answers at the tip of their tongue for everything and anything, never wrong. We don't kind of have those moments of vulnerability and humility, which I think are, I would say, more at the top of my list of what I'd like to see in a great leader. And so it is partly even having permission to take care of yourself, right? As a school principal or vice principal, you wear so many hats. You are something to everybody. You could be everything from kind of being a psychologist to a nurse to a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you're trying to be all of these things, and sometimes in wanting and working through that on a daily basis, you lose yourself and taking care of yourself first, which is so important. And so I think part of it is really making sure that we don't lose that and give permission for our leaders to really take care of themselves so you could take care of others.
No, I agree 100%. And some of the leaders I've spoken with have said that they found it really interesting. I noticed that you have had a role or you believe in community collaboration, and they really find when they're able to collaborate with others. And I've seen it myself in some social media groups like LinkedIn and sometimes Facebook. You'll see education groups and the ones where sometimes principals will post some of these issues either anonymously or they can use their name within another group of principals. And there seems to be a lot of really great support and flow from that. Are there other types of community organizations or groups they can join that you would recommend that can help provide them with support in their current roles?
Oh, I'm not sure if I have a list of where I would send people right now, but I think there is a lot out there. It takes a lot of courage to share stories, and I think we're hearing more and more leaders who are sharing personal stories and kind of really spreading that word that it's okay to look for help, to seek help, to talk about what you've experienced. So I think that's key. So there's I feel like there's a lot of different groups that people can reach out to, a lot of culturally responsive supports as well. Um, so I guess I hesitate I wouldn't be necessarily, I'd probably have to do some of my own research if I was looking for the right group that would fit everybody. But I certainly know that there's a lot of groups out there. So it is about kind of taking the time and looking when you need to.
hmm So with the Ontario Principals Council, is that something that principals are automatically affiliated to, or do they have to enroll in it? How does that work?
So we have a number of different supports. One is it's an organization called 𝗘𝗅𝗽𝗰𝘁, and that's available free to all of our members. And so essentially, that could be, again, it's not for someone who is in a mental health crisis or for necessarily dealing with um, an extensive mental health issue, but kind of just looking at overall general good mental health and what you need to do to maintain that. Because we all have highs and lows. That's a normal experience for all of us. So it is building awareness and knowledge about even what mental health is, and knowing that you're not alone. I think that sometimes, you feel like you kind of spoke to that about when you have a physical injury. Nobody questions that. Everybody's very sympathetic and, you better get help and you better make sure you take care of that. And you don't get that when there's something around mental health. I think there's a lot less understanding, and the stigma is certainly still going strong. So it really is just combating some of those attitudinal barriers to make sure that people get what they need, the support they need, and making sure, I guess too, like everybody has to have their circle of care, whoever they're going to, who can be there for them and kind of give them that critical support when needed is really essential.
I like that circle of care. That's so wise. Absolutely. We all need that.
Absolutely.
And so I'm also hearing that I guess when we're looking, I'm very involved in professional learning. I believe in lifelong learning. I think that, there was a day where it was something we did to advance our skill sets in our careers. But I think we're now into an age where ongoing learning is just going to be required to just retain our skill set and keep up with students. And of course, there's the staffing shortages in providing it. There's time. Nobody wants to do it if it's an add-on to the end of their workday or into their weekends. We'll do it maybe for qualifications, but it's not as much fun when you can't be as engaged when you've already put in a 40 or 50 or more work week, and then we're trying to engage it. So as I'm speaking to principals about what are they doing for professional learning, I'm getting the same vibe from almost everybody this year and saying that it's just not happening much for their teachers and their staff and being able to provide it because of these teaching shortages. Do you have any recommendations for them, suggestions, alternatives?
So I think my internet's a little bit wonky. Is your question about supporting teacher and staff learning in the school, or the learning of principals and vice principals themselves, or
It's
both?
how that sort of down funnel effect, how principals themselves can be setting their schools and their teachers up. They're all struggling with ongoing professional learning in their staffing, with the teaching shortage, because they're saying they can't release them for release time because there's such a there's shortage. And I don't know if they're still having the PD day, the professional learning days, or they're not. But I was just wondering if there were any suggestions that you were providing them with in dealing with this and managing their schools, because if the teachers aren't, how can teachers guide students in AI and if they can't engage in professional learning themselves?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, AI is a whole nother topic, I feel like, but I think in terms of learning and building capacity, I guess maybe I will start with the leaders and what they're doing. It is about investing in learning and modeling that for others. Um, you know, I think when we're part of an educational system, um, hopefully we're all sort of thinking that ongoing continued learning is foundational to our practice. And it doesn't, again, have to be in a really formal way. Learning happens all the time. We think about experiential learning, life experiences. And so sometimes it's even the conversations that are founded on professional content, thinking about new ways of innovation and creativity and meeting the needs of students and families who we're serving, can be a great source where we're kind of like doing that social networking and learning from each other, and kind of gleaning insights from our partner next door, at another school, even globally. So sometimes it can be as simple as a conversation, which I think is really important. In terms of staff, I think the same. Um, I used to always say, even as a principal, and also as a superintendent, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be so formalized, where sometimes you could have a big spiel and PowerPoint and everything else happening at a staff meeting or PA day. And if nobody in your school ever hears you talk about student learning, best practice, or assessment, or an instructional strategy ever again outside of that, you kind of lose your credibility anyways. And it doesn't kind of scale throughout your school. But if you're just having, sometimes it could be like a 1 or 2 minute conversation in the hallway. Okay, how's so and so doing? Is that working? Have you tried that out? It's less intimidating. It becomes real and embedded around students and practice. So hopefully, even in we are still engaging with our staff, we're still talking to them. So sometimes it's just don't forget about the instructional practice, because you know what? Kids are in front of us every day, 6 hours a day, and they're supposed to be learning. So we can't forget. We have to find some creative ways to sneak it in there. And even in small sound bites, it still has impact.
I like that, building it into some of the opportunities that we already have. And, in today's world of saturation of, new tech coming at us, and I know I said AI, but I should really just say educational technology, because, AI is kind of part of all of that now. But the real crux of it is that there's just so much new tech coming in, and it's not just the learning of it, it's for teachers and educators to know what should they actually be investing their time in, what are they going to get a return on. And when you're building it in, as you said, to things like a staff meeting, micro learning is fabulous. These small sound bites, you see them in smaller YouTube clips, and it's more likely to be relevant, and that 10-minute learning video versus getting people to sign on for an hour or 2 hours and then they can immediately use it. I did speak to someone with an Edtech company that actually is coming out with a site that was kind of interesting, where they're creating, it's almost like a forum for teachers, I guess, within a school to collaborate, but they can try out different pieces of technology and they can post it for other teachers in their school. And there's mechanisms built in so they can provide feedback to one another on how it worked for them. Or it's like, teaching each other in sound bites, if you will, or micro learning. And that might be interesting to see where that goes, because it feels like those days where when I was teaching, we would have so many days where you were relieved for the whole day, off you went to a conference or to workshops and seminars. And it doesn't sound to me like that's still happening. I don't know.
It is still happening, but I think they're fewer and farther in between. And it's about just even access to those sessions because of what leaders are dealing with within their schools, right? So it's not always accessible. I think it's a luxury right now to be able to, and often it's on your own time too. That's the other piece, which it can be looked at as good and bad. I think again, sometimes it's a really healthy space, even when it is on your own time, to kind of connect with other educators and leaders. And I think that investment in your own learning, I know sometimes it can seem like it's a chore, I don't have time, but it's almost like in this cycle, you don't know what comes first, sometimes some of that investment in learning really can kind of pave the way for dealing with some of what's in front of us right now that's causing us the most stress. So I think with AI, there's nothing greater, or anything technology related, there's nothing greater than what you mentioned, like just being able to play with it and experiment without fear of, I'm not going to get it right, because we're just never going to be there where we just know everything about technology. It's just never going to happen. So it's not going away. So we might as well try and use it to our advantage, and also so we can better prepare our students for what they're going to be living with.
No, I absolutely agree. And there is, as you said, can be a lot of fear of trying the new things, the time. It seems like so much. Do I really need it? I really love it actually when I'm doing workshops myself and we do some, live playing with technology. And it's amazing when teachers and leaders get into it and they realize it's really not as overwhelming and complicated as it seems, or you don't really need to delve that deeply into it to just get started and to play with it. And I'm also really encouraging leaders to know that it's not always what you know about the technology. It's being able to ask the right questions of the technology companies and of the people providing the professional learning to know if it's right for your school. Where's your data stored? What can it do for you? Like knowing those questions, they make sense to anyone, whether you're in technology or not, when you're evaluating it to see if it's going to be worthwhile for your teachers and yourself to invest in it. And that makes it a little bit less scary when you don't need to dig into a 300-page manual to get started. If I were a teacher today and I was interested perhaps in pursuing a leadership role in the future, what do you think would be the most important qualities I should have to be a fit for that role? And what advice would you give me today?
Oh, that's a good question, and a big one too. Okay. Well, I think first and foremost, I would say being open and have a learning stance. I would say teaching has always brought so much joy to me, but it's not what I expected. Like, I think I just learned so much as I was going through. I probably wasn't very good when I started either, and hopefully you're just getting better all the time. So I think it's about, just really centering like the purpose of teaching. You want to inspire and serve students and families so that they can be the best version of themselves and contribute, give back to our society. And right now we are living, it's a global society. So really kind of keeping an open mind. I think we all feel like we know something about education because we've gone through our system. Um, but I think we're in a time and space where we have this opportunity to really change our system. So I would say just coming in with a real openness, and being in a proactive way willing to kind of challenge and reinvigorate what we know today as being education would be so exciting. I think that's what is exciting about education right now, is that it's possible that we could be part of a new vision. It's going to be hard work, but I think, just really wanting to serve is really important, because it's not an easy job. I think maybe in the past, I remember when I was going to go into teaching, I think that's what my mom used to always say. That's a good job. I mean, this sounds terrible, but yeah, that's a good job for a woman. You should go into and it's not easy. It has never been easy. And so now it's even harder. So I think just having kind of your heart, like it's that human piece needs to be in the right place. And I think it can be something, a career that can be so exciting, and you just don't know where it's going to lead you. And part of that, though, is investing in your own learning and continuing to grow in that role.
I like that. You're absolutely right. Being open, investing in your learning, and the serving and giving back. I think when we're learning new things or growing ourselves as educator and trying new things, it doesn't feel as scary or as though we have to be perfect when you're giving back and you're in that role. And people are so happy to have your help and see you. It's such a different system when you're doing I personally love to do 2 nonprofit projects per year, and I feel like they feed my soul. And they're so forgiving when you're setting up new systems for them as you're learning and growing. If things go wrong, everything just feels so good about it. That's the human part, I guess, you discuss. Because I don't know, I have colleagues that started their careers really, really wanting to make a difference. And I think this happens in a lot of careers, not just teaching, where you enter a profession because it feels like a calling. And then 20 years later, you feel like you're just 9 to 6ing it, punching a clock, and that heart has left. But the serving that you discussed in the nonprofit, that's what reinvigorates me. I feel like that's what helps you deal with the very difficult phone calls or the very difficult situations with students and parents. So I like that answer. What would you say? So looking forward to the next coming school year, what are some of the goals and aspirations you have in your role as with the Ontario Principals Council?
Well, part of my role is around engagement. So kind of based on some of the questions you've already asked, I think it is about meeting the needs of a diverse group of administrators across the province who are looking for different things, have different interests, different needs, different time and life restraints. So it really just is about, hopefully, I think, really engaging more leaders. To kind of come back to where the joy of leadership is. I think we've lost that in the last few years. And, I guess even when I think about technology, and sometimes it puts educators, I think, in a space where we're not all experts. We don't have the time to learn the next new Edtech tool that's out there. But what we do have is we do have knowledge about, hopefully, what we've learned over the years of being in classrooms and schools. We have knowledge about good pedagogy, good leadership, human-centered thinking. And so hopefully we kind of don't negate that and don't second guess ourselves to kind of jump in. I think that's where the hesitancy is. We don't want to jump in and just say, you know what, we do have a lot of knowledge, and we hopefully are continuing to grow and learn, because there's so much power in that. And kind of like what you said, when you are the first one to say, you know what, I've made a mistake, I'm just learning, and let's just get through this together and work through it together. It's such a powerful space. Like once you start really embracing that, even kind of your biggest sort of people who are watching, waiting to kind of catch you in something, they can't even do that because you're doing it first. And, they're either coming along with you or, you know what, they're just not putting up as big of a fight sometimes, right? So I think it's just about increasing engagement and people finding the joy in learning, seeing how much it actually does contribute to the role of leadership in schools and being able to lead a school community with confidence, with grace and humility. That is going to make the job easier. It's hard to see that sometimes in the landscape of everything that we're dealing with, but I truly believe that as a truth.
You're 100%. I'm right behind you on that one. Engagement is my buzzword for this year, literally. I think especially since a lot of the training is happening online now. And I mean, I've been in the online environment for 20 plus years, long before it was a thing, way back when, it was a lot more suspect. And you learn very quickly when you see high attrition rates, when you see, kids not completing courses, adults not completing courses. I myself have purchased courses that, I'm going to do that later. And there's ones that you complete, you're very engaged in, but the ones that have little to no engagement, they're not even really actually interactive courses. I call them more like digital books. There's not an actual person engaging you and compelling you to log in and developing relationships. And it's the same for teachers, principals. And, I had a colleague I was counseling on providing workshops the other day. And they had no visuals, I said, okay, are you talking to your audience or you're talking at your audience for an hour? Because I guarantee you online, they're not listening to you. They're going to be tapping on their phone. There's so many things they could be doing while they're pretending to be polite and listen to you. But if they're not engaged, they're out. Like you've all just wasted an hour. Learning's not happening and nobody's having any fun. And of all people, we should really be the ones that know how to have some fun with our learning. So I think engagement, you're absolutely right. It's 100% a buzzword. I devoted an entire chapter in my book just to engagement, that if it's not happening, you've wasted a lot of time on the front end developing curriculum, developing materials, traveling for workshops. And I know we've all had that professor that talked at us in university, versus interactivity and working together and collaborating. And our attention spans are shorter than ever too now, as we all know. So
yeah, for sure. It's so interesting how we think about adult learning, where there's a continuum of how you think about it and how adults receive information. And then seems like we forget sometimes about just good teaching pedagogy works. There's no age limit on good pedagogy for engagement. But, sometimes you have to do a bit of convincing on what works, right? So
absolutely. And I mean, when we look at andragogy for adult learners, they are no nonsense learners, adult learners. They want to get to it. They have other things to do, other responsibilities. And when we're building virtual learning sites for them, they don't want a lot of bells and whistles going everywhere. They want it to be clean, make sense, and be relevant to what they're doing. That's my other word, engagement and relevancy. If it's not relevant, forget it. They're not in and they're not going to remember it. And it's a huge complaint right now, whether it's education training, corporate training. If it's not relevant, we're like, why are we doing this? And I looked at a study a couple of weeks ago where they were saying that adult learners, they said that 33% of them said that the learning they were engaging in, Susie, was not relevant to the work they were doing.
Yeah. No, that's not good. Not good.
It's not good. All right. Here's your wrap-up question. So what we're doing, to add a little fun to our own podcast, I have each guest create a wrap-up question for the next guest, not knowing who it's going to be or what their role is in education. So this is your question, Susie. It's from Julia Deacom. So Julia, I interviewed her, and she is the Director of Education at the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. And her question was this. She said, education leaders are often told to prioritize better, to be more strategic, and at the same time to do more with less. This must be resonating with you, Susie, the do more with less part.
Yes.
In the end, we all find ourselves with too many balls in the air. How do you juggle it all and keep your perspective at the same time?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I think I've progressed in my ability to have better work-life balance because I think there are just, again, I think it goes back to having permission to not be everything to everyone all the time in the role of a school leader. So I say that, but then I also think that we need to be the other way to prioritize is you keep students and families at the center. What is most important, because the impact, what I love about the role of or being in education is the impact that you have. It's such a privilege and a responsibility at the same time. And so if you keep students and families at the center of all your decision making, and what you're prioritizing as the most important is sort of what's going to impact them first and fastest sometimes. Then you kind of, your to-do list is your to-do list. It's never ending, but you kind of focus on the big things that are going to have the greatest impact. And you do that with, love and grace, and kind of remember that humanity that we don't want to forget, especially in this digital age. So I think it's really just those two, like giving yourself permission to take care of yourself, but then you do a better job of leading and serving students and families. So, but you do have to have that core value and vision. So I think everyone has to do a little bit of discernment and reflection on what those are, because people see that. I think that really resonates, and kids especially, can see right through you. If, when you're not being authentic, they're like the experts on truth, I think. So I think that goes a long way too in building a great community where everybody does thrive in their learning.
Absolutely. So focus on the high value goals. And I think Brian Tracy would call the rest of it. He had this book out called Eat That Frog. I read it and I thought it was fantastic. And he said, what he basically said was that when we get caught in the little stuff, he's like, never start with your email in the day. When you get caught in these little things that are really not going to move you forward in your goals in the day, they just multiply. People email you back. They keep coming, right? But did you ever notice that magically when you start with if you turn that off and you start with the high value goals, the rest of it seems to get done at the end of the day anyway, or most of it?
Yeah,
I don't know. So I think you're right. I think you got to focus on the big goals, take care of yourself, and keep a good balance. That's a great answer.
for sure.
Where, Susie, can other principals and leaders find the Ontario Principals Council? So what's the website? Digits.
Okay, so it's just www.principals.ca.
So www.principals.ca. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, Susie. It was great and so informative. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Annette, for this opportunity. It was great to just sit down and have this conversation with you.